Hey, good morning to you. It is Thursday, Thirsty Thursday. You ready for another dose? Oh my goodness, we are in 388, almost 400 episodes of the Daily Dose. Not one day did I miss. I'm pretty proud of myself. You don't have to be proud. That's okay. Again, it's my Daily Dose, not yours. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Maybe this is your very first time. And maybe you're on a weight loss journey, and if you are or struggling in weight loss, struggling with your health, this message is going to be for you. It's truly the only recipe that you need to lose weight and to get back in shape. And now, if you're anything like most of the students that are in my program that reach out to for help from me because they know I work with men and women over 40 and I help them lose weight without long workouts and impossible diets. I've been doing that for a number of years. I was doing that when I was in my 30s, working with people in their 40s. I did that when I was in my 20s. I was working with people in their 40s. And here I am now on the verge of 50. I got a year and a few months left. And one of the things that I've learned is that there is truly a recipe, really one recipe, the only recipe that you need to losing weight and getting back in shape. Now, if you're in shape now, if you're lost the weight, if you are feeling amazing, this message probably is not for you. But if you've been on this kind of roller coaster ride, let's talk about recipes. I'd love to talk about recipes. And if you're on here live, let me know by sharing with me the very first recipe that you ever learned. Okay, I'm going to share that with you while you are coming on. Now, if you're catching this on the replay, feel free. Again, jump in, share, let me know that you're here by sharing with me what was just name the food, the very first food that you made. Good morning, Lori. Good morning to you. What's the very first recipe? I'm going to share with you a real quick story. My work experience as my daughter now is working at a sub shop. It made me nostalgic to think of my very first job. And the first time I started, I wasn't making subs and she's taking orders and stuff. And I kind of did that as well, but I learned how to cook about at her age, which is really kind of cool. So she's learning how to make food and make sandwiches and things like that, for a restaurant. So not a restaurant, it's a sub shop. So when I started out, I learned my very first recipe. I think I'd shared this story before. You probably have heard, if you've been following me any period of time, that I worked in an old little country deli. And I started with the newspapers. I used to put the New York Times together and I'd get them on Saturday and I'd put all the sections in. Then I moved up to Stock Boy. And then I moved from there to Bus Boy. I was cleaning dishes and it was a little country deli, but it was an interesting experience, to say the least. Then I moved into behind the deli and I was making sandwiches. And then I ended up in the kitchen and I learned how to cook. Really, it was my first experience, aside from my grandma who used to help, my sister and I when we were learning how to bake with her and all those fun times back in the day. But here I was in this general store. It was called the Sagaponack General Store, old school. I don't even know if it's still there. And this is out in the eastern end of Long Island. So I remember my very first recipe. Now, before I even got to the recipe, I actually had to learn how to cut and dice and chop and pluck and peel and all those types of things. Chicken and herbs and spices and all that kind of stuff. But then I got to make something with this recipe and I was really excited. And they said, Mark, you're going to follow the recipe. You want to know what it was? Well, you got to tell me what your very first recipe. Do you remember? I have an uncanny memory for things that happened a long, long time ago. And I can't even remember sometimes people's names when I first meet them, which is kind of crazy. So I've had a few people reach out and bump into me in the grocery store. I was like, hey, Mark, I've been enjoying your Daily Dose. And I feel really bad because I sometimes forget their names. So I do apologize if that was you. Back to the story. I'm digressing here. Back to my story of recipe. And it's really, really pertinent to what I want to get about your only recipe you need. It was coleslaw. I made coleslaw. I'm not even joking. Cabbage, mayonnaise. We had some salt and pepper, and I think there was sugar in there and some cider vinegar. And then there was a secret recipe. And it was for this coleslaw. And I'll never forget. And you might be making your own coleslaw. I haven't made it in years. But I remember it was Nancy's. It was a specific type of mustard. Nancy's. It was a fancy type mustard. So it was mayonnaise, salt. It really wasn't much to it. The point is, it was a very, very simple recipe. But can I tell you that people drove all over from who knows where to come get some of this coleslaw? Now, mind you, they bought other stuff, but coleslaw was like one of our jams. Like, people came for our coleslaw. We hand chopped the cabbage. It wasn't like it comes in a bag or a package, and it's not in a, manufacturing plant where they just have a machine chop it up. Literally, I was one of those people that chopped up the cabbage, boxes and crates of cabbage, and we made the recipe. So why does that even matter? Why do you even care? It's really important. I heard last night it was an interview, TD Jakes and Stephen Furtick. And if you haven't seen it, it was on last night live. It's on YouTube. You can go back. I believe it's now available. You can go check that out. It was amazing. And he has a book that's coming out. And what he shared a lot of, there was just so much value. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, there's just so much here. And it made me think, about influence and who is influencing you and how you're being influenced and what you spend your time listening to and all those types of things. And it made me think of like recipes. It made me think of like a menu. Like, it made me think of a lot of people who come to me and they say, Mark, I'm really, really confused. I don't know how to work out. I've been told all these different things. People told me I should not eat carbs. My hormones are the reason why I can't lose weight. I'm older. I have aches and pains. I have injuries. I'm frustrated. I've tried what they told me to do and it didn't work. I ended up quitting on myself. I gave up too soon. All those things, right? Not to get into all that, because that's like literally could be hours and hours we could be talking about that. But let's talk about your recipe, the only recipe that you need. You see, for that specific place, you probably would have never heard about it unless you lived out there. For that coleslaw in that little country deli back in the 80s when I was there, right? That was the recipe for the coleslaw that made part of the success. Now, it's not the only thing. They had lots of other recipes and lots of great food, but that was one of the things at that time in that season. That was why that coleslaw was so successful. People loved it, tasted great. It was a recipe for that particular place, right? Now you have your own recipe. Let me just share this with you. But here's the thing. You have to follow your recipe, not anybody else's. Like, you might have heard this and might have heard that and might have done this and maybe tried that a little bit. But the reality is, it's your menu, right? Here's the thing I love about restaurants. The best restaurants, at least in my opinion, and I don't know, you can agree with me or not, but we can agree, some of the best places that I've had experience in a restaurant were where the menu was very small, right? You think of like fancy, we call it like fancy restaurants or like higher end, fine dining. And some of those restaurants, right, you go and they have literally just a handful of things on the menu. Why? Because they probably do that really, really well, right? And they have their recipe that makes it really, really good. It's probably helped make that restaurant successful. And that's what I want you to hear from me today about the only recipe you need for losing weight and getting fit is your recipe. Now, how do you figure out your recipe? Well, you got to know what you're going to put on your menu. What's the most important thing? Now, you might have a menu filled with all kinds of stuff right now in your life, right? You might have the appetizers and the starters and the samplers and you might have a buffet and you might have the main course and you might have, this and that and everything. There might be just too much on your menu. And I'm not just talking about food. I'm not just talking about fitness. I'm not just talking about weight loss. There may just be too much on your menu right now. There may be just too many things, too many choices. I won't knock this place, haven't gone in a while, but I remember going back, maybe 5-10 years ago. And there's nothing knocking Cheesecake Factory, but I remember when I sat down, they basically handed me what looked like a Bible. It was about this thick and it had like pages and pages and pages of food. And then pages and pages of cheesecake, right? Of course, they have cheesecake. But I was like, how can any of this food be fresh and good if there's just pages and pages? They can't have that much, working in the food industry. So I was like, it wasn't my deal. The food might have been good. It just wasn't my deal. I prefer a smaller menu, clear. When you start to have a big menu of things, it makes it hard. And here's the hardest part. Over time, we start to listen to different people. we start to realize that, oh my gosh, I listened to that person and then I went down that trail and I will listen to that person. And hey, why should you listen to me? What makes listening to me any different? It's not whether it's different or not. I just want to share with you maybe what would really be helpful for you in your weight loss journey is to clear off your menu. Maybe start a new menu. Maybe it's to actually start building your recipe for your main course, so to speak. What do you want to achieve? Are you trying to lose weight for, that vacation you haven't been able to go on in the next year? Or are you trying to get the weight off and keep it off forever so you can live the life on your terms and the health and be as healthy and fit as you can for you, for your spouse, for your family, all those types of things. But here's the thing, and I shared this just early on when we came in. I was listening and being influenced last night. I spent a good hour and a half listening to Bishop T.D. Jakes and Stephen Furtick. And I was thinking to myself, I'm so glad I spent that hour and a half, and I felt that really influenced me. And one of the things that I heard T.D. Jakes say in the beginning, he said, you become great in your mind before you become great. You become great in your mind before you become great. Think about this for a minute. One of the reasons why maybe your menu is so big is you don't believe, or maybe you're believing everybody else, but yourself, that you can actually get in better shape, that you can actually lose the weight, that you can actually become your best, the absolute best that you want to be based on your menu and your recipe. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Listen, I know there's lots of different recipes to losing weight and getting in shape. I know that there's lots of different options and different menus, right, for you to go. But think about this. If you've been struggling over the course of maybe the last 5, 10, I know some people 20 plus 30 years, you probably have this like overwhelming menu of ways that you think is best to get the weight off and to get in better shape. And guess what? When you confuse, you end up losing. If you're confusing yourself, you're losing. So what will be helpful is to get some clarity. So to first, think about this. The recipe you first need, the first ingredient, this is it right here. The very first ingredient you need for your recipe on your menu to get in your shape, to get the weight that you want off for you and nobody else, to get the body that you want, the body that you want to feel, the energy that you want to have, the confidence that you want to live with, right? Like if that's what you want and it's on your menu and it's your recipe, you got to realize this. You got to become great. You got to believe that you have that ability to become great in your mind before you become great. Because if you just try to get the weight off, and I've seen it time and time again, if you just try to get the weight off, if you just try to work out a little bit, you're half-assing it, you're doing like mediocre, you don't have any direction, there's no guidance, there's no accountability, right? You may lose a little bit of weight, you may get a little bit of muscle tone, but guess what? You're still not going to become great. Why? Because you didn't work on getting great in your mind. Now, how do you get great in your mind is kind of like that recipe. Why does that relate to that coleslaw? Mark, why did you tell me about coleslaw? Well, guess what? That coleslaw was great coleslaw. It was great coleslaw. Now, do you think it started out with great coleslaw? No, it probably didn't. In fact, I bet you, because I know for a fact the family that had the recipe for this coleslaw was actually the grandma's. It was the grandmother's recipe that was brought down to her daughter, and her daughter taught it to other people, myself, and it was a part of this restaurant. And it was an amazing recipe that got developed over time. But I knew, and then guess what? And then people had to enjoy it. Well, now mind you, your recipe and your menu is for you to enjoy. Are you enjoying where you're at right now? Like, are you enjoying being overweight right now? Like, do you feel that being half the potential that you have the ability to is going to be what is going to take you through the rest of your life? Do you not believe in yourself enough to take the action steps or get the help you need? A lot of times I talk to people on the phone on a regular basis. I even have a number of calls today who tell me the same thing. Mark, I've been struggling. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then this, and then they fail to pull the trigger to get the help they need. And they give me an excuse. Typically it's an excuse. Most 99.999% of the time, it's an excuse why they can't do it. They, oh, I got to ask my spouse, or oh, I can't afford it. Like, if you're at a point where you've been struggling for a number of years and you've been kind of running and gunning and winging it and maybe up and down the roller coaster ride, how much is that costing you? Like, can we just be upfront and open and transparent here? There's nothing that breaks my heart. It really does. I'm not looking for just more clients in my program. I'm really, truly wanting success stories, because what has a hard time sitting with me is knowing somebody needs the help. They need that guidance. They need that direction. They need a little bit of influence. They need to learn how to work that recipe on their menu for their goals, right? I didn't just figure out how to make coleslaw. I learned by following a recipe. And guess what? I learned how to make it really, really good. If you were to ask me what that recipe is right now, I couldn't tell you, because not anybody in my house really likes coleslaw. But I would say back in the day, back in the 80s, that was the jam. Like, that was the thing. And I learned it and I got really good. So you want to get really good at this thing called life? Do you want to get really good in your health? Do you really want to get a really good looking body so you can be confident and have the energy and finally feel good about yourself when you look in the mirror or put a bathing suit on or stand there naked in front of your spouse when it comes to intimate moments? Like, that's my question to you. So in order to become great, you got to start with it in your mind. It doesn't mean that, oh, like, Mark, well, you don't really understand my situation. I've had it really, really hard. I've gone through a divorce and I lost my job and I have all these family members I got to take care of. And, the job I really hate and all those things. I understand that. And I'm not to discount any of those things. But here's the thing. It doesn't mean you can't make decisions and can't make choices now and can't get the help that you need, so that even if the circumstance in your life kind of suck right now, that you don't have to go down and suck with it. Like, you can control your response to all the other things, even if they are really not so favorable in the season of your life. Does that make sense? So here's one of the things I want to share with you is, how do you get help? Why should I listen to you for help? I'm not saying you should. All I'm saying is you got to stop allowing either other people or yourself to influence you, especially if they're not qualified. Like, if there's a reason why you've been struggling up and down and you've been doing it on your own, you're probably not qualified to get that weight off and get yourself in shape. But be very cautious and very careful who you listen to, who you are focused on. It could be maybe a friend. Oh yeah, try this shake that I've been doing for months. It's just the best thing ever. I've lost so much weight. Again, be cautious, be careful. Not to say that you can't lose weight on some sort of a shake. Hey, go here to this little weight loss clinic and they give you pills and they tell you to eat 500 calories, and then they measure your body fat and then it's going to be perfect and that's the solution. Be careful. Be careful on anything that sounds too good to be true. Is my program too good to be true? Not necessarily. It takes hard work. It takes effort. It takes actually putting the work in to get the recipe working. I had to work the recipe in order for it to work. For that coleslaw to taste really, really good. Did I mess it up? I messed it up a few times. And chances are you've probably messed up your recipe in your weight loss journey and your fitness journey as well. But it doesn't mean you have to keep messing up. And how did I learn how to get better at that recipe? And how did I learn how to get better at my own recipe and my own weight loss and fitness journey? Right? Why do I not? You're like, Mark, you're the coach. Like, I struggled with my weight over the years. I struggled even while I was a coach. I know my genetics, part of my genetics, I don't lose weight easy. I don't have a super awesome metabolism. So I'm just sharing with you that the struggle is real here too. But I learned how to work my recipe on my menu for my plan. And guess what? I learned, and I helped have people surround me to help influence, to help provide the support, to help give me the encouragement. Yes, Mark, you can do it. You can improve. You can get better. And that's what I'm here to tell you. The only recipe that you need for losing weight and getting fit is your recipe. Okay, and how do you follow that recipe? Well, you got to decide what you want most. Do you want to live life only for the weekends, and your recipe is just to drink another bottle of wine, or wallow in self-pity by diving into a half gallon of ice cream every night, or sitting on the couch and saying, I don't have time for working out, or just being stuck in a job that you hate? Like, those are some of the things, right? You can change the circumstances. You can, but you got to start in your mindset. And the only way you're going to become great is you start from your mind. Here's the best thing. Here's the one thing. You think about this on being a ship. Yesterday in Mayport, a big ship, and I don't know all the details, but in Mayport, a ship came into harbor, and I believe they were out to sea and I saw something fly over, and I was curious, so I went and looked, and I can't remember the name of it, but apparently there was a ship that was out, and we have a naval base here, so it was a Navy ship, came into port, had been out for probably months, maybe a year, I don't even know how long. But I was thinking of all these men on the ship to protect them, and all like this time that they spent, and they have their family that are going to be waiting for them, excited to see them again. And I was thinking to myself, that huge ship, well, there's probably more than one, but there's a way that they're steering that ship into the port, right? Into Mayport. The way that's steered is by probably one or two, like a steering wheel. I don't know exactly how it works. It's probably all digital and electronic, but probably for the most part, there's a captain of the ship that's steering it. You got to realize that you're your own ship. You have to steer the ship. A coach can't do it for you. You have to steer the ship. You have to decide which way you're going to go. Nobody else can tell you how to do that. Nobody else should. In fact, don't let anyone, if there's one thing that can resonate with you, don't let anyone tell you what your recipe should be, so to speak. Don't let anyone steer your ship. Your ship. It's your life. It's your ship. You steer it the way you want to go. If you want to live life on your terms and be out of shape and overweight and unhealthy and be at a high risk and a low immune system and have medical issues and be on medication and be depressed and be anxious and don't have confidence and no energy at all and feel like a weakling, or feel like you're 60 when you're only 40, or feel like you're 80 when you're only 50, it's up to you. That's fine. It's your deal. It's your ship. But if you're looking for a new recipe, if you're looking to clear out the junk that's on your menu and develop the kind of life that you probably know in your mind, but maybe just don't believe it yet, you and I need to have a conversation, because what I'm doing right now is looking for more success stories. You see, I've made my entire life's work the last 26 years helping men and women. Did I know what I was doing in my 20s? Not really. I still got results in my 20s not knowing what I was doing. But 26 years later, I honestly feel like I'm just getting started. Why? Because I feel like there's a whole lot of people out there, and you might be one of them, who need my help. You need to have the clarity and direction. Now, again, it's your recipe, and it's your menu, and it's your body. But I'll tell you what, there's nothing like having a mentor or a coach who's done it hundreds and hundreds of times, like my boss, where I work, to help me make this coleslaw really, really good by following a really awesome recipe. And guess what? It was delicious. Do you want your life to be delicious, or do you want it just to have it taste kind of bland? Like, that's what I feel like people are missing right now in life. They have a bland life, mediocre. They're just settling. Stop settling. If you're out of shape, if you're overweight, if you're unhealthy, quit settling already. What are you waiting for? Oh, but Mark, here's what I hear. But Mark, you just don't understand. It's expensive to hire a coach like you. You must be super expensive. I'm actually pretty damn cheap compared to the alternative of not taking care of yourself. Here's the thing. Nobody looks at the cost of what happens when you don't take care of yourself. Nobody looks at the cost of losing your job or being out of work because you were sick so many times, because your immune system's so bad, because your health is so bad. Nobody's thinking of the cost of you being overweight and out of shape and not having the energy to not be productive in your workplace, or, potentially ruining a relationship because you can barely just get enough energy to get up in the morning and go to work, let alone have time for your spouse to focus on her. She deserves it, or he deserves it, right? Or how about your kids? Like, think of the cost. Think of the cost for generations to come. Let's go deep right now. Think of the cost for generations to come, and your kids are only watching the recipe for self-destruction by eating terrible, by not exercising, by not taking care of yourself. Oh, maybe you have a lot of money in your bank account, but maybe you are 100 pounds overweight, you're out of shape, you're unhealthy, you can barely breathe, you can't get up, you can't get your clothes on, it's hard to do all those things. Guess who's watching? Your kids. Like, this is not to judge. This is just to inspire and encourage, because I know and I've seen it happen. I've seen people change the recipe. I've seen people wipe out what's on their current menu of destruction, self-destruction. And I've seen people start fresh and new and develop a new recipe so they can have one hell of a delicious life. Are you ready for a delicious life? Like, seriously, that is my word. If you're ready for a delicious life, send me a private message, delicious. Let's do this. I'm just telling you right now, it's not to brag, but I really feel right now life and where my family's at and business and my health, it's pretty freaking delicious. It really is. Is it perfect? No, but it's pretty freaking delicious. Why? Because I've made sure that I'm following the recipe, my recipe, the direction I'm headed. And I want to have a healthy, fit life. I want my kids to see that. I want my wife to know they have a healthy husband. Is it going to be perfect? No, that's the point, but it's going to be progress. And I'd rather not live a mediocre, ho-hum, bland life. If you're one of those people, this message again is probably not for you. But if you know there's something better, something more delicious than where you're at right now, the recipe's waiting for you. Sometimes it just takes getting a little help to put that recipe together. All right, that's all I got for today. If you were inspired, encouraged, don't just be inspired, encouraged. In fact, the worst thing you could do is just be inspired and encouraged. The best thing you can do is freaking take action steps. Now, I don't know if I'd be a good fit for you. I have no idea. The only way is for you to actually take the next step, which is to get on my schedule so we can have a conversation and we can have a look at where you're at, what your menu and your recipe right now looks like. Chances are it's a disaster if you've been struggling with weight and you don't even know where to start. And maybe you got injuries and you're on medications and you feel like crap, right? Guess what? Your menu's probably crap and we need to change it. We need to change it, you and I. But again, it's going to be your recipe because it's your menu and it's your life. Now, what do you want to do with it? You want to stay where you're at? You want to continue with that crappy menu? Or do you want to have a good menu, a menu that's delicious? Send me a private message with the word delicious. We'll get on a call. We'll see if we're a good fit. And we'll make the next year, the rest of 2021 and into the year after, the best year ever, the most delicious.